All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're digging into the real wealth of conscious spending. We're going to completely tune out those loud, flashy finance gurus on social media, and instead, we're looking at the quiet, unsexy, and mathematically proven habits of building actual wealth. Seriously, if you've ever felt completely exhausted by traditional budgeting advice, this one is absolutely for you.
So let's start by addressing a feeling that I think pretty much all of us know all too well. Picture this. It's 11 p.m. on a Sunday. You're sitting at the kitchen table, staring at this massive, complex, color-coded spreadsheet, trying to track down some rogue transaction. And suddenly, you're agonizing over a $4 coffee you bought last Tuesday, feeling this heavy, sinking guilt just because it pushed your dining out category slightly into the red. You were literally tracking every single penny, and yet you still feel completely trapped and broke. It makes you wonder, right? Why does doing exactly what traditional financial gurus tell us to do feel so utterly miserable? Is it possible the whole system is just designed to make us feel like we're failing?
Well, here's the thing. The reason traditional budgeting fails almost everyone who tries it is because it acts exactly like a financial crash diet. Think about weight loss for a second. We all know we just need to eat less and move more, yet we obsess over the minutiae of weird supplements and temporary detoxes, and we do the exact same thing with our money. We burn up our limited mental energy on pure deprivation, debating the tiny details of lattes, clipping coupons, and chasing fractional interest rates. Why? Because arguing over those minor details kind of absolves us from having to take real systemic action.
To break out of this cycle, the source material introduces this totally fascinating concept called invisible money scripts. Basically, these are powerful unconscious messages we inherit from society over decades. You know the ones: money doesn't grow on trees, or you're throwing money away on rent. It's wild how the sources frame this, because these scripts actually weaponize our core emotions against us, specifically fear and greed. Fear pushes you out the door to go to work, and greed pushes you to spend everything you just made, perfectly trapping you in the rat race. Normal budgeting tries to fight these massive, primal human emotions using sheer guilt, which just turns our financial lives into a miserable exercise in self-denial.
And this brings us to a complete paradigm shift: conscious spending. Instead of cutting back on absolutely everything and being miserable, you prioritize ruthlessly. There's this great story in the sources about a guy named Jim. Jim gets this massive raise at work, right? But on that exact same day, he deliberately moves out of his luxury building and into a smaller, significantly cheaper apartment. Now, why on earth would he do that? Because Jim realized he didn't actually care about having a huge living room. He slashed his rent, a massive expense category he honestly didn't care about, so he could guiltlessly spend his entire new raise on his actual passions: high-end camping gear and mountain biking. The takeaway here is so liberating. You can spend extravagantly on the things you genuinely love, as long as you cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't.
So how do we actually pull this off in our own lives? Look, many of us already know the basic mechanics of personal finance, but the real secret is shifting our focus to what are called the big wins. We're talking about the 5 to 10 major life moves that get you wildly disproportionate results. Things like automating your savings and investing, finding a career you actually enjoy, and aggressively negotiating your salary. The reason these big wins are absolutely crucial is that if you just get these macro-level decisions right, your entire financial trajectory changes. And the best part, it completely removes the need to ever sweat the tiny details again. Honestly, you can order all the lattes you want if your big wins are locked in.
Nailing these wins really builds into a much deeper understanding of what wealth actually is. Because let's face it, a lot of people fundamentally confuse being rich with being wealthy. The sources highlight this super fascinating psychological trap known as the man-in-the-car paradox. Imagine a valet working at a high-end luxury hotel. He dreams of owning the Ferraris and Rolls-Royce he parks every day, convinced that driving one will make people respect and admire him. But the brutal truth he eventually figures out is that when a Ferrari pulls up, literally no one cares about the driver. People only gawk at the car, imagining themselves in the driver's seat. The driver bought this insanely expensive machine to look important, completely unaware that he's being entirely ignored by the very people he's trying to impress. We live in a society that constantly judges wealth by what we can visually verify, right? The sports cars, the massive houses, the perfectly curated Instagram feeds. But spending money simply to look wealthy to others is a massive blind spot. There's this deeply revealing story about the pop star Rihanna. A few years ago, when she nearly went bankrupt from massive overspending, she actually sued her financial advisor, blaming him for the losses. His response in court was hilarious but brutally honest. He just asked, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? I mean, it sounds painfully obvious, but wanting to spend $1 million is literally the exact opposite of being a millionaire.
So the absolutely crucial point we've got to internalize here is that true wealth is what you do not see.
Wealth isn't the flashy possessions stacked up in a driveway. It's the first-class upgrades you declined. It's the luxury cars you didn't buy. It is the diamonds left in the store. True wealth is your financial assets that haven't been converted into physical stuff. The only way to actually be wealthy is to not spend the money that you do have. It's a quiet, invisible accumulation.
To acquire that unseen wealth, the sources remind us of a foundational rule that we all probably know but so frequently ignore. You have to differentiate true assets from liabilities. It's a cliche for a reason, guys. An asset is simply something that puts money into your pocket, whether you're working or not. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. If you want to build quiet, enduring riches, you have to spend your life actively buying things that put money in your pocket, and stop buying liabilities disguised as assets.
Because when you lose sight of that fundamental rule, the standard American dream rapidly devolves into a financial nightmare. Just look at the typical life cycle. A couple starts out in a cramped, affordable apartment. They diligently save up and eventually buy their massive dream home. But boom, immediately they're hit with high property taxes and maintenance fees. Then they feel the need to buy brand new cars and expensive furniture to match the aesthetic of the new house. As the years go by, sure, their income goes up, but so do their taxes, a very real thing called bracket creep. Eventually, despite making more money than ever before, they're maxing out credit cards and taking on consolidation loans just to stay afloat. They think working harder will save them, but it just means paying more to the government and the bank. Their expenses have perfectly mirrored their rising salary, and they are completely trapped.
To break that cycle and officially escape the rat race, you have to fundamentally change how you process your paycheck. You must implement the absolute most powerful rule of wealth building: pay yourself first. Normal, flawed budgeting tells you to pay everyone else first: your landlord, your utilities, your credit cards, and then save whatever happens to be left over. But let's be real, there is rarely anything left over at the end of the month. Instead, you must mathematically allocate money to your asset column the very second you get paid. The emotional allocation of your money comes second. You fund your own wealth before anyone else gets a single dime.
Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about my bills? Won't I fall behind? Well, paying yourself first creates this massive, highly intentional psychological shift. Think about it. If you don't pay yourself, you aren't going to complain to yourself. You'll just quietly accept it. But if you come up short on your bills, your creditors will absolutely scream. And you know what? That is exactly the point. The intense pressure of those remaining screaming bills forces your financial genius to wake up. It forces you to find new, creative ways to generate income or cut useless expenses. It's literally like lifting heavy weights at the gym. That deliberate pressure is exactly what makes your financial muscles grow stronger.
But look, the goal isn't to live in a constant state of manual stress. We completely eliminate that Sunday night kitchen table spreadsheet by building a rigid, automated financial infrastructure. Imagine a system where the very second your paycheck hits your checking account, a predefined percentage is automatically routed into your investment accounts and another percentage straight into your savings. This entire routing process happens while you are literally asleep. You wake up, you've paid yourself first automatically, and you get to experience the immense relief of living your life completely guilt-free on whatever is left in the primary account. It's a game changer.
By automating this flow, you're leveraging good old dollar cost averaging. Most of us know how this works mathematically, right? You're buying strong assets every single month through thick and thin. But what the source material really highlights is the incredible psychological benefit here. The real magic isn't just the math. It's the fact that you completely remove the emotional roller coaster of trying to time the market. If the market drops, your automated system simply buys more shares at a discount without you having to panic. If the market peaks, you naturally buy fewer shares. You stop reacting to the frantic news cycle, and your money just quietly works in the background, completely detached from your daily emotions.
There's a brilliant comparison in the sources that really cements this mindset shift, and it's the classic story of Ed and Bill. Both these guys were hired to deliver water to a local village. Ed immediately bought 2 heavy buckets and just exhausted himself doing physical, back-breaking labor, running back and forth to the lake every single day. Bill, on the other hand, took a radically different approach. He disappeared for a year and spent his time designing and building a massive pipeline. Once it was finished, Bill's automated system delivered perfectly clean water and cash directly to his bank account 24 hours a day, whether he was sleeping, playing, or working. Normal, restrictive budgeting? That's just trying to haul your buckets slightly more efficiently. Conscious spending and automation is actively building a pipeline.
Now, think about this number for a second. $12,000. Just let that sink in. That is the exact amount the entrepreneur Derek Sivers managed to save by the time he was 22 years old. At the time, he was making minimum wage in Manhattan, but he aggressively kept his living costs incredibly low. Once he hit that $12,000 mark, he had this huge epiphany. He realized he was fundamentally free. He quit his day job and became a full-time musician, playing just enough casual gigs to cover his basic, low expenses. He had permanently bought his freedom for a fraction of what most people think it takes. Years later, when he actually sold a company for millions of dollars, he famously said the millions didn't change his life much at all. Why? Because he had already bought his true freedom back when he only had 12 grand in the bank.
And that story perfectly captures why we do all of this. The ultimate reason we spend time building a pipeline, keeping a massive margin of safety, and accumulating all this unseen wealth isn't so we can eventually go out and buy more shiny things. It is to purchase the single most valuable asset on the entire planet, control over your own time. A little bit of wealth buys you the ability to take a sick day without financial panic. More wealth buys you the ability to take a job you actually like, or maybe get a shorter commute. Unspent wealth buys endurance, it buys autonomy, and it buys the ultimate ability to dictate the terms of your own life.
To achieve this profound level of freedom, you have to radically shift your internal vocabulary. You've got to permanently banish the phrase, "I can't afford it," from your mind. That phrase is a dangerous sign of mental laziness. It immediately shuts down your brain, stops all creative problem solving, and leads straight to financial despondency. Instead, you have to force your mind to ask, "How can I afford it?" That simple, one-word shift completely opens up your brain. It exercises your mental computer and forces it to actively search for exciting possibilities, hidden income streams, and creative solutions.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. It is time to throw away that restrictive spreadsheet and clearly define what your uniquely rich life actually looks like. Stop worrying about looking wealthy to complete strangers in traffic. Take a hard, honest look at your financial statement right now. What liability, disguised as an asset, are you going to ruthlessly cut out of your life today so you can start buying back your time? Keep building, keep compounding, and I challenge you to start building your pipeline today.